I would just like to formally welcome Meg. I have had the privilege of working with Meg my entire Moodle life. And she is an amazing educator and trainer for Moodle, and very experienced in Moodle. And I'm really looking forward to this because I still get stuck on Moodle because I work on Moodle sites for all of our Moodle conferences. And I'm really looking forward to this myself to work out how to do it without just a PDF. So that's good. Thanks, Meg. Over to you.
Thanks, Wendy. What Wendy didn't mention is I got drafted into doing a presentation on Wednesday afternoon, I think. So this is a little on the rush side. It's nothing terribly in depth, unfortunately. Thanks, Wendy. So we thought what I'd just do is give a brief overview of where some of the problems that I see with people who are starting off new with Moodle, where they pop up with not so much problems, but ways that things can be done much better. Let's get started, I suppose. Just a brief background on me. My background is as a high school teacher in history and English. So that's where I started off. I didn't really like the classroom so much. Love the teaching side, hate the discipline side. So left for a while, ended up working, to be saying, in the real world. I worked in an accounting firm for a while, a medium-sized firm, before being drafted to work at Pukunui. I'm a history buff. I'm a big sports fan, especially the Swans from the Aussies. You can see there in that picture. I am a sci-fi geek. I work with Shane. I am a grammar Nazi, sorry. And I am a devoted aunt. Last count, I had 20 nieces and nephews. So yes, I understand Frozen, even though I don't have any children of my own. But in having 20 nieces and nephews, the oldest is now 25. And it's very interesting that I see their reactions to education from a slightly different angle than their parents. I think as educators, we often get told that great quote, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand. But we forget about it when we're dealing with the day-to-day reality of the classroom, of our situation. We're just trying to get that information across that we need to. And it's very hard to reconcile the greater goal of education, which is to improve the person themselves, as well as whatever that syllabus is that you have to get across. So very often the first response you're going to get from your educator is, I've got everything online. What do you mean I've got to go and put it online? I've got it's all on paper, it's in my folder, it's here. See, I'll just photocopy it and hand it out. And I'd be very surprised if any of you haven't come across that with some of your teachers beforehand. Exactly, Maureen. I know. I did come across somebody with an overhead projector a couple of months ago and went, oh my God, they still exist. Wow. Talk and talk, exactly, Deborah. I actually have one sister who's a teacher and one niece who's just actually in her first year of teaching now. And, oh wow, that's even sadder. Their response to me has been, hate Moodle, doesn't work. And I just want to grab them and say, can we spend an hour? Give me your course, let's spend an hour. Let's see what we can do. One of my nieces, a very, very smart young woman, exceptionally smart. She's doing communications law at UNSW. Got in the top 2% of the state for her final exams. Just got given a job as an assistant producer at SBS, even though she's still in her final year of uni. So this is a very bright kid. When she first heard I was working for Moodle, she went, yuck. And, oh, what are you talking about? Give me Blackboard any day. And okay, now we need to have a conversation here. What's the talking about? What are we talking about? And she pulled up a site that looked horrible. And I simply said, sweetie, it's not Moodle, it's your lecturer. And she thought about it for 2 seconds and she went, yeah, that fits. This guy's stuck in the 70s. So that's what we're dealing with a lot of the time. This is an example from the New South Wales HSC Modern History syllabus, just to give you a brief example of what I'm talking about, and I'm sure what you've seen. This is just one of 5 sections or topics under the module of Russia and the Soviet Union. I know this one inside out and back to front. I have done it so many times, it's not funny, so that's why I picked this one. And as you can see, each of those 5 topics has half a dozen points underneath it that need to go on, need to be covered. This is what you generally see the first time round. Now, Tabitha, your presentation had an even worse one from memory. You had about 6 columns, I think, of just absolute listing of documents that were even worsely, named worse than these ones. So the PDF quiz, PDF assignment is what we see the first time round. So what we need to think about is we need to convince our teachers, I'm sure you have, Chris, that the problems with this is that firstly it's just a bunch of stuff to read. That's all it is. And if they just handed out handout after handout in class and read through it, they'd be bored too. There is no interaction with students. Yeah, there's nothing the student is doing other than opening that PDF and reading it. And whilst perhaps maybe it might be okay for blended learners, it's not for online by any stretch of the imagination, and even for our blended learners there needs to be a lot more than that. It's intimidating. And again, Tabitha, if you still hear that one that you showed yesterday, how scary must that look for any learner? A lot of the clients I work with, a lot are dealing with adult learners who this might be the first time they're doing some kind of learning in ages. And that's what you're going to show them. And it is, of course, the dreaded scroll of death. 10 points for anyone who can name the artist there. So it just where you scroll on and on and on. And that was what my niece was initially complaining about with her law course, that it was just such a long scroll. The 2 main questions we need to get our teachers to consider, and I'm hoping there's some first-time users around here in the session today who can have a think about this as well. How else can we convey this information, as well as how we can make the page look interesting? We need those 2 things to work together. Most of you, a lot of you are going to know some of this information already. We need to consider some of the basic alternatives to that PDF, which is page and book for starters. The main things we need to realise is that with page and book, they are so easily updatable. If you have a PDF, you've got to go back, find the original Word document, hope you still have the original Word document, edit that, resave that, re-upload it. Or I can just go straight into my page and edit the information there. And I think we've got to show our teachers too that there's more options there as to content. So rather than my PDF of a profile of Lenin, I can stick my picture next to the text, and I can stick in a video underneath. Not quite clear here, but I've got links down the page as well. The wiki quote page, so some of Lenin's quotes. The Lenin's tomb page, which if anyone's interested, gives you a virtual tour of his mausoleum. It's actually quite interesting. So more embedded information there. Yeah, Indira, as you said, embed it, put that information there. It's still a static resource, but with the video there, it becomes a little bit more interactive for the student. And Maureen, I've had more than one person that when I've shown them how book works, oh, this is perfect, fantastic, thank you. I love this quote from France, and I think it's absolutely something that we need to remember. You don't learn to walk by following the rules, you learn by doing and falling over. I still do a little bit of tutoring in my spare time, and one of the things I've noticed over the last couple of years is that when kids are 3, 4, we get them out of the habit of asking why. And then all of a sudden in year 11 and 12, at least with the New South Wales English syllabus, We want them explaining the why, but we've stopped them asking that question to begin with, so they just miss it completely. It's a bit sad, actually, that we stop kids asking why sometimes. And you've got to go out there and do it, and you've got to go out there and ask those questions to learn, and that's what we need to facilitate. So just a couple of the activities, and these are the ones to start with. These are the ones to get the people who are really struggling with Moodle, get them using these ones first, I think, because they're simpler to work, and you can give them some suggestions as to how to use them in slightly different functions. Now, the photo there, as I mentioned at the start, I did warn you, I'm a devoted aunt. This is another one of my nephews hiding in the corner here. He's currently on a 6-month stay in Vietnam, teaching English to local kids. He only just finished his Year 12 last year, so he took a 6-month sabbatical before going to uni, went off to teach English in Vietnam. He is having the time of his life, as you can tell from our photo. So these are the ones I'm going to quickly have a look at. Forums, the chat, the wiki, the glossary, lesson, and roles, which I know isn't actually an activity, but there are a couple of things you can do. With forum, we've got to realise that it's more than just about talking to each other. Two of the best examples of forum that I've seen used recently, using the Q&A forum, which probably gets underused a little bit. But the first one was in regards to case studies, an organisation that was doing a lot of social work type situation. So what they were doing was giving, using the Q&A forum to give a scenario, a case study, and then wanting the students to reply. So the Q&A forum allows that they have to put their own reply in before they can see anybody else's response. So they can't say, oh yeah, everybody else has already covered what I was going to say. Another activity I've seen was with stimulus material for creative writing. Here's the picture, or here's the opening sentence that you have to use. Go and write your story. And it was done in a forum post. And that way, again, couldn't see anybody else's first, but were able to read everybody else's after they'd done their own response. Chinese whisper style story, perhaps, except without things getting altered the way they're doing Chinese whispers. But have a forum so that one person starts the story or the scenario, and then somebody else responds and continues that story. So imagine in a primary school setting, kids sitting around the room, around in a circle and going around the circle, next person starting, saying the next sentence of the story. That kind of thing you could also use in a forum. Telephone. Oh, thank you, Josh. I haven't heard that one. I don't think we have an actual name for it. I knew Chinese whispers wasn't exactly what I was after, but yeah, that kind of style. And yes, India, put the ratings on. Put the ratings on, particularly the star ratings. They work a little bit better than numbers with a lot of people. Also, do things like share resources. So rather than just a database, put them in the forum so that people can talk about them. I'm going to give this particular resource for this course 3 stars because it's good here, but it's not good here. So the way you end up with comments underneath an app before you go and download it, I don't know about everybody else, but when I look at an app, my phone, I check the comments first to see what people are saying about it. So that kind of thing could work with forums. And of course, the idea of group reflection as well, so that everybody can talk about something that's going on. One school I know puts it up for kids who are they have social type groups. So the kids, I think clubs is often what they're called in the US. Kids are into news, for example, or foreign affairs or something like that. And they want to talk about these topics, but you can't really talk about them in the playground because it's a little uncool. So there's a social course for them where they can talk about some of these topics with other kids who are interested, as well as just said reflection on perhaps an assignment, perhaps a video, things like that. With the forum, I think it's really important that you give clear guidelines on how to use it. what's acceptable, what's not, what are we looking for. Make that really, really clear from the get-go, because forums will, when there's conversation going on, people will get distracted and go on. Chat's another one I think that gets underused because we just see it as that talking to and from. One suggestion I had recently from a class that I was teaching, so this is a new one to me as well, I haven't yet seen it, they're going to use it, but I haven't yet seen it fully play out, is the idea of role plays. They were running a course in mediation, and the idea was to get a couple of students to play each role. Who was the mediator? Who were each of the parties? Was there anybody else going to have to be involved in that chat? And that way they could live, the way you would in the classroom where you'd role play it out, just have a live chat of that scenario going on. And so bringing in that functionality that again might be in the classroom into an online situation. As I said, they haven't had a chance yet to use it. They are under instructions to let me know how it goes because I'm really interested in seeing how that works, but I can see that working very, very well outside the normal use of chat. You have your normal office hours idea, which I think is where it gets used a lot. Lecturer is available to talk live at this time. I think you can also set them up for collaboration, perhaps. There might be a group assignment. So set up a group, put them in, and then allow that group access to that chat room so they've got an area to collaborate with each other live, rather than using messages or trying to set up times and whatnot. Same for study groups. You could set up study groups within that course so they can talk to each other live, help each other out, work together themselves. And we know that kids work with each other well if you give them the space to. So let's say Michelle, with 8-year-old underprivileged kids, and they were thrilled that they could talk to each other. Oh, that's fantastic, Michelle. Yeah, that sounds like a really, when they discover that they can do something like that, is a real eye-opener for them. And wait till they realise they can talk to people all over the world like that. That would be fantastic. And struggle with English, yeah, I can see that. Lynn, and that's that last point you're referring to. One of the things that you can do is realise that the chat is actually recorded. You can go back and look over it. I do know one school that turned it off and then turned it back on because they realised that it was going to happen regardless. If they didn't talk to each other on the Moodle site, they were going to talk to each other on Reddit or on another Jabber chat or something. Let them, encourage them to do it on the Moodle site so that they could monitor it. They could censor what was going on. They could see which kids were the problems. And it actually helped attack some of the bullying issues in the school because of that. And yes, that's the problem in that we will get off topic very, very quickly, and it can be difficult sometimes to pull them back in. What age group, can I ask, Lynn, was that with? Adults or kids? Because sometimes adults are worse. So I think you've got issues with your forum. You've got to make sure that you've got clear guidelines, especially regarding behaviour. And I think if you let them know that this is recorded and you have a copy of it, okay, some kids will ignore it straight away, but it will help, I think, keep people on track a little bit. High school. Right to you. Yeah, sounds like some of the kids I used to have. I think you've got a couple of options. I think if you perhaps train them a little more on it, that might be a little way to go with it, but it'd take time. Perhaps start with small things or smaller, shorter chats or something. I think it's got a lot more functionality than people realise. The wiki, I find that people with the wiki, they either default to the group only or they default to the individual only. They only use one type. They don't use a combination of the two. which I think is limiting what they can do. For an individual one, they can have their own personal reflection space. Perhaps you could have study note area, be that in a group or an individual. Again, if you've got a group assignment going, they could have a group bookie that they could work on together to add to whatever the documentation is going to be, rather than emails back and forth and did somebody get left off the email and where's the latest copy of the document. And also planning or draft workspace. This idea came from in New South Wales. There's a couple of courses that the HSC that allow creative work by the students, so textiles and designs, for example. And one girl I see to help with her English, she's doing textiles, so she has to create a dress, was what she is creating, a dress that she has to do entirely from scratch. So she has to draw the pattern herself, and she has to source the material and source the inspiration. There's a lot of components that have to be handed in with this. It's not just the finished material, it is a full portfolio of all the work that's gone into this dress. And she has this folder that is falling apart because there's so much stuff in there. So what she's been doing for anything that's been online, because she also said there's web pages I'm referring to, I've got to keep track of these as well. She's been using Pinterest to keep a track of all the web pages that she goes to, and she's been using as her inspiration. So I thought, well, if you had a wiki, not only could you record stuff, but you could use it to record those links as well. So as well as her process, anything online is going to be easier to store there than in a notebook. The glossary, I found a couple of cute ideas with this. Use them because you can let your students create them so that you don't actually have to do it. This is the first tip with glossary, because that gets them doing something as well, gets them involved. I've seen a teacher, she did at the start of the year, the task was every week everybody had to add 5 words to the glossary. This is a language course, which is fine. You know, the first week we get bus and car and drink and friend and words like this. But by the end of 10 weeks, they're struggling for words. So they're looking up words like a whole lot of adjectives, you know, beautiful, large, things like this, and they're really extending their own vocabulary because they've had to add a word that isn't already in there. The other thing I've seen recently is the who's who, where everybody goes and creates their own entry about themselves as a way of introducing students to each other. They've got somewhere, and so somebody from their class messages them and says, oh, can you help with this? And you don't know who that person is because you've forgotten. An easy way to go and look up who they are. Lesson, I like the choose your own adventure books. Anybody else have those as kids? That one that's there, I actually do remember reading as a kid. I remember that very clearly. I bugged Dad about Easter Island for about 3 weeks after reading that book. I wanted to go to Easter Island. That's what they are. They're a lot of fun. Whoever wrote that one on the demo site, I love, because I use it when I'm training all the time, and we always end up falling off the mountain because I get everybody in the class that I'm teaching to pick what response we do, and we always end up falling off the mountain. I think they could be a possible alternative to the certainty-based marking in quiz. Certainty-based marking you want to use with, I think a prime example of certainty-based marking is medical and health industry, because, as I say, I want the doctor to be absolutely sure he's cutting off the right leg. So that's where that comes into play. But there's an excellent program Stanford University have, and it's worth doing a Google. If I find the site, I'll put it on this course, called SICO. And it is a game, essentially, and you are the attending doctor in the emergency ward, and you have to organise, what test, what treatment, what drugs, etc., to give to your patient. It's a great little game. And every time I play it, I end up either killing the patient or costing about $200,000 in unnecessary tests, because it is aimed at medical professionals. But a great game. And it's based on the lesson concept. Okay, this is what you've got. What do you do next? This or this. So if you're looking at certainty-based marking, try a lesson instead. I have someone else who, I can't talk too much about what they actually do, but they were using it to sort out levels, essentially, to the groups. If you got this mark in the first lesson, you got into group A, and we were eventually going to move you off into this stream. If you got the next rung down, well, you weren't good enough to get into group A and do that particular style of work, so we're going to move you into this style of work instead. So they were actually using it to work out who had the analytical and developmental logical skills that they needed for different subsets within their organisation. So I can't talk too much about it specifically, unfortunately, but that's what they were using that for. The main thing with the lesson, though, the biggest problem with them is they take a bit of planning, they take a bit of thinking about before you do them. Now, rules is a really quick one. You can teach your teachers how to do it in their course. That could be interesting, could be fun. This is an example from my Year 7 Ancient Egypt course. I've simply renamed the teacher Pharaoh and renamed the student Archaeologist. Something a little different, something a little fun, and it only applies for that course. I've seen teachers duplicate the student roles. They have a couple of different student roles, exactly the same. They're not changing the roles, they're not changing the permissions, but each one has a different name. So in, for example, a Vietnam War course, everybody's private to begin with. And then if you got a certain mark or you did a certain thing, you got promoted up to major or corporal or however it works. And, you know, and they did it, it was a very basic gamification idea of who's first to hit general. And no permissions were changed at all. They just duplicated student, and he just went in and changed their role every time somebody hit that level. Really basic gamification. Nothing like, who was it last night? Dorian last night had a fantastic game course that he was going through. Nothing as complicated as that, but it was a way to get, again, just get involvement, because we know that kids can be competitive when you let them. So how do we make it look interesting? And again, a lot of you guys are going to know this already, but it's course format. Start there. Start by looking at those plugins. There's some great ones there. I love Grid. This is my How to Survive the Zombie Apocalypse page. It's based on the CDC website, actually. So big buttons work because people on the internet like hitting them. I've seen Grid used well with 5-year-olds. I've seen it used very well with farmers who don't want to be online. Thank you very much. Why do I have to do this course? We'll just put nice big bright buttons there for everybody to hit so they can find where they're going. I like Grid. I think it's very intuitive for people in that respect. Egypt course. I like collapse topic as well. Nice, straightforward. Lynn, yes, essentially, yes. Hang on, I'll go back. Each of these is a topic. So introduction to the coming apocalypse is the topic header. So renaming it from topic 1 to that. And you add an image for each topic, and it then pops up like this instead of down the page. Thank you, Josh. And yes, much cleaner than a table, because when you click on then that button, there's the items that are within that topic. Very, very quick, easy way to get around scroll of death. And one of the things I love about iMoot, I got to tell Gareth last night that I think it's my favourite plugin. Collapse topics is another very easy one. So you just click on the topic to drop it down. And yet, Lynn, there's one topic as well. Again, very useful. Depends a little bit on your students, on your target, because they're the ones. What are they going to best respond to? I suppose some people would like this; they'd find it very logical and straightforward. As I said, people who a little less experienced in the internet might prefer the nice big bright buttons. No, Gizzy, 2.9, Gareth's been updating it for every version, so it means short topic names. Oh, yes, it does, doesn't it? That's the only problem with it. You've got too many. Yes, but my admin won't let me install plugins. Has anyone had that problem? No worries, Maureen's covered. Labels. Start with labels. Again, really, really heavily underused. They can spice up the look of your page. Oh, lucky you, Lynn. They can be used to put in a video on that course page. They don't go anywhere. They don't take you off the page the way Page does. But you can embed any kind of image or text in on that front course page. I've seen them used for navigation section, like a menu section, so links to further down the page or to each topic a little quicker. Often used to give instructions or guidelines. Subheadings for your topics. If you've got a really long topic, you don't want to break it up into separate topics as such, for whatever reason, you could put a subheading then in there to break that up. Divider lines, which I'll show you an example of in a sec, and image maps is the new one now. I'm not a HTML person. I do run away screaming from it. But Vinny, he's got a demo course, which a pirate treasure map, and you just have to move around, click on the link on the map. There's about 5 links on the map that take you to each topic. So there's a few different things you can do with labels there. And that's an example of my divider lines. This is a very long topic, got a lot in there, so I put in just a straight line just to split up that list so it doesn't look so intimidating. And that's all it looks like in the editor, just a line, that's it. And visually it makes so much difference. The other big one, if you don't use it, look at it, is Orphaned Activities. You said I had fun with images last night. Basically, again, most of you guys will know this already, but for anyone who's new, we set up those activities or modules that we want to use as that quiz, that glossary, that assignment, whatever it is, in later topics, perhaps 9 or 10. Then we change the number of topics in our course back to a lower number, back to say 7. So you've got to start with the higher number of topics. So you start with 10 topics in your settings, go and put what you want to hide in topic 10, then go back and change it to a lower number. And now the only way to get there is to have that direct link. And that's how it will look. Grayed out, you'll see it. Students will not see this. If you turn your editing off, you won't see it. So if you've got a lot of data, easiest way for each topic, just make one page resource, and on that page, add the link to each of those activities. We'll hide everything under a second link, so it looks like more of that menu page idea. I'll let you hide activities and resources at the ends of others, particularly at the end of book. A lot of people say, how do I make them get to the end of book? Put the assignment on the last page. Hide it, make it an orphan activity, and put the link in the last page of the book. Now they've read the last page of the book, because otherwise they're not going to get that assignment you've told them to do. Certificate I've seen used a little bit in a similar fashion. Normally certificates done with restrictions and access, but yeah, I've also seen certificate hidden a bit like an Easter egg. And let you add in links to a wiki page perhaps, or something like that as you need to. But yes, Maureen absolutely cleans up the site. So the key thing is to think about how you can hack your site. By hack, I don't mean break into. I mean like a life hack, like this one, which is my favourite. And if anyone doesn't know lifehack.org, go and check it out. Lots of cool ideas. How do I use what I've got that's not in the way it was meant to be used, basically? How can I change it? How can I do it outside of the scope? It's that classic thinking outside of the box thing. Once you get people started on it, they will actually keep going. Is there another item I haven't thought of that might do the same thing? Create yourself a dummy user. I've Kermit the Frog and Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and all those kind of characters on my site and on several customers' sites at the moment, actually, as dummy students. And then I log in as that student and do the course that way. That's going to give you the best idea of how a course looks and feels to a user. And can you get someone else to check it out, someone who hasn't been in creating it? Because when you've been in there and you've put so much effort into how it looks and all the layout, you think it looks fantastic. Maureen, you'd probably have to get your admin to add one in, but it'd be fairly straightforward. They can just do a quick manual added one. I routinely drag in the nieces and nephews to go and check over stuff for me. There's a couple I actually owe either drinks or $10 to because of some work they've done. So that zombie course, they had a lot of input into how that looked and what was going into that, because I thought it was something fun that they might help me out with when I was learning some stuff with Moodle. And we had a lot of fun with that. They were giving me feedback as students, as users. I was seeing it from a teacher perspective. They weren't. And I find that's, if you can access someone who can help you do that, that's fantastic. I often tell the kids a tutor, best thing you can do when you've been writing an essay, walk away for a day, come back and then proofread it and then edit it, because you know what you're writing. So give yourself a break so you can come back to it and be really critical about it without jumping over words that you know what they mean. Even better if you can have someone read it for you. Font Iceland, easy icons in there. Oh, that's a good idea, Chris. I actually hadn't thought of that one. Write that one down. So there's some tips for testing your course and making sure that it's working right. Has anyone got any other ideas on how they use things either a little bit differently or ways that they've used some of those activities in ways that are different? You know, I'm really liking the idea of Font Awesome, actually. Yeah. Right, I'm writing that one down for me. I know what I'm playing with tonight. Yeah, that's all. I'll leave that there if people want to chat for a bit. And just to remind ourselves, I think I like this line from perhaps one of the world's leading role models for education, I suppose, at the moment. We have to remember it's one book, one pen, one child, and one teacher can change the world. It is possible to have an impact on your kids so that they go and do something important. And I think we've got to remember that yeah, we can have that impact. We can have that. We've just got to give them the opportunity to go and show us. And to do that, you've got to let them interact and work themselves. You can't just give them a load of documents and say, here, read this. It doesn't work that way. So thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope I didn't bore anyone too much with stuff you already knew. My details are there. Please feel free to give us a shout out if you'd like to. Otherwise, thank you very much. And I'll stay here for a bit and see if we keep chatting a little bit on how we can use things. Michelle tried to make our page look better, more interactive. Oh, good. Thank you, Michelle. I saw your session. I didn't get to see it live. I saw a replay of it, and what you're doing is amazing. I think that's fantastic.
I'm just going to jump in here and say thank you, Meg, so much. And I learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody else did as well. But you're welcome to keep chatting, everybody. Our next session is in about 50 minutes. If you just have a look online and see what's coming up next. And yeah, Meg, thank you so much for that. And just afterwards, you can hop into the forums and we can keep going with these conversations even if we finish up this room. Thank you.
Yep. I think Shane's up next, actually. Yeah, there's a security one from memory, so. Anyway, thank you again, everybody.
You are currently the only person in this conference.